All right. Welcome to the regular meeting of the Board of Library Trustees for October 10th, 2023. The time is 6:01 p.m. and I'll invite Ginger to call the roll.
All right, Trustee Ando,
Here.
Trustee Cortez, Trustee Kyle,
Here.
Trustee Lee,
Present.
Chair Vidat.
Here. Thanks, Ginger. And now I'll invite Ginger to explain how the public can participate in this evening's agenda.
Thank you, Chair Vidat. This meeting tonight is being recorded and streamed live to Zoom, and members of the public can provide public comment by phone by calling 669-444-9171 using the meeting ID 871-116-36733# and pressing *9 to raise your hand for comment. Or you can comment and watch directly through Zoom using the link on the agenda and use the raise hand feature through Zoom. If you experience technical difficulties, please email library@cityofsanrafael.org. You will have 3 minutes to provide your comments once unmuted. We are offering closed captioning for this evening's meeting on Zoom. Select the live transcript button on Zoom to enable this feature.
Thank you, Ginger. With that, I'll call the first item on the agenda, which is approving the regular meeting minutes from September 12th, 2023. Are there any questions from trustees to the staff regarding the minutes from last month? Ginger, is there anyone in the audience?
No attendees at this time.
Okay. So I'll open and close public comment, and we'll go to a vote on approving the meeting minutes, or what? Do you need a motion? And I'll call for a motion.
I move to approve the minutes from the last meeting.
Second.
Then Ginger, will you call a vote, please?
Trustee Ando,
Aye.
Trustee Cortez, Trustee Kyle,
Aye.
Trustee Lee,
Aye.
Chair Vidat.
I'll abstain. Moving on to the next item, which is open time for public expression. For any in-person attendees or online. And Ginger, I don't think we have anybody.
No.
Close public comment and move on to item 2, which is getting to know the San Rafael Public Library collections by Katie Port.
Okay, and so I'm pulling up Katie's PowerPoint. Let's see. Hold on one second.
And have you met everybody already?
I was gonna introduce them. I'm just doing it. Let me know if you need me to share it again.
No, that's okay.
Good evening, Board of Trustees. My name is Katie Port. I'm a supervising librarian for the library. So pleasure to see those of you I've met before and everyone I haven't met before. Hello.
Hello.
Good to see you all. This is my first in-person Board of Trustees meeting ever. And that's nice. I know we did the Zoom thing for a long time, so it's good to be here. Jill, you want me to share it again?
No, sorry.
Or I have it here, but we need to get the Zoom, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let me just try and for some reason I'm not seeing it as one of my options because it is right. Not here. Let me just X out of this. And it should be here. It's this one, but then when I go to Zoom,
Click on that or see it.
Okay.
When you.
Yeah. Last name Port, P-O-R-T.
Thank you, Kevin. Okay, so I will put this in presentation mode and then I'll hand it over to Katie.
Go to slideshow. And then from beginning, which is on the left there.
Okay.
Should be. No, I got it.
It's just Maggie.
Thank you all for your patience.
Smooth transition.
Yes, smooth transition. Okay, great. So let's see if this works. All right, so I'm here to talk to you today about the library collection. One of my responsibilities as a supervising librarian is for the library's collection. So question one is, what is the library's collection? That's just a word we use to refer to everything in the library that is available for people to use or take home, right? So all the books, all the DVDs, all the materials, that's the library collection. So what is in the SRPL collection? As you know, we have 3 locations: downtown, Weed, and Northgate. In the downtown library, we have about 82,459 items as of yesterday. Pickleweed, we have about 9,000 items, and Northgate just over 5,000. This is obviously a number that fluctuates, but those were the numbers yesterday. And that refers just to the physical items. So in terms of physical items, we have print items. That's anything that's printed on paper. It's all the books, magazines, graphic novels. Audiovisual is a category that fluctuates quite a lot and has since I became a librarian. For example, when I started out, this might have included things like books on cassette, or one item that's come back recently that we don't have yet is vinyl records, right? For a long time, libraries didn't have that. Now they do. At our library right now, this is what we have. I'll refer a little bit more to some of those later, but that's the list. I wanted to point out our language learning materials. We have a great collection of those. So that's like book and CD sets, Pimsleur CDs, things you can listen to improve your language learning in any language. We have materials for English speakers wanting to learn other languages, and then we have special materials for Spanish speakers and some speakers of other languages who want to learn English. So that's a great part of our. And then we have a few other items. This is just kind of like the fun stuff that are physical items, but aren't books or AV. We have Chromebooks people can borrow if they don't have their own laptop, or if they would just rather use one of ours. We have some great park passes. We have park passes to the state parks, the local parks, the Marin Municipal Water District. And then Adventure Kits is just some fun stuff, like we have some ukuleles in the children's room and some things that you can take home.
They had Pickleweed had a Wi-Fi.
Can we hold questions until the end? Thanks.
And then the digital collection, I hope you've all taken a pass at our digital collection, at least. Just very briefly, our Overdrive collection contains a lot of new and hot books. Those are ones we buy specifically. Canopy is a great resource for film lovers. There's thousands of films on there, documentaries, films from all countries all over the world. That's sort of a lesser known one, but it's fantastic. Hoopla, which is, it's more of like a subscription service. The library subscribes to Hoopla. The catalog of items varies, sort of like things on Netflix come and go. But Hoopla contains movies, it's got music, it's got comics, it's got movies. It has a lot of older nonfiction, the kind of thing where our physical copy might have worn out. You can often find it on Hoopla, and then it has brand new popular stuff too. So that's a great one. And then the Palace project. Palace is an effort by the California State Library to create a one-stop hub for libraries' digital materials. So the idea being that one day you can go to one app and have everything integrated into it. It's sort of nascent right now, but it's really cool. There are some things that are native to the Palace app. There's a collection called eBooks for All. That's an effort to have one ebook collection for the entire state of California as a way to smooth the current situation where very affluent communities have very robust ebook collections, and then less affluent communities have less. And that's due to the very high cost of ebooks. So we have over 1 million items in our digital collection. There's even more. We have digital newspapers. You can read the New York Times or the Washington Post online, a lot of stuff there. So that all is considered part of our collection. Okay, what's hot in our collection? So this is a graph I made you, and what I'm attempting to represent here are the top 3 item types over the last 12 months at each of our 3 locations. So let me just go through that with you. You'll see some things are the same, but really each location is very different. And that's how libraries tend to be. Even within the same community, different libraries in different spaces, people want different things. So let's start downtown. Downtown adult fiction dominates. 25% of what we checked out in the last year was adult fiction. The number 2 category is children's fiction in English, and the third is adult nonfiction, which I was glad and surprised to see. I'm a nonfiction reader, and I guess there are some others there. When you go over to Pickleweed, it's a completely different story. The top 3 items there are all children's items. You see kids fiction in English, kids fiction in Spanish, and then picture books are the top 3 things at Pickleweed. And when I say kids fiction, that refers to what some people call middle grade fiction or chapter books. It doesn't include picture books, board books for toddlers, easy readers, that kind of stuff. So
That's all picture book.
And then at Northgate, you see an entirely different picture, which we are so interested in. The top category is kids fiction in English. A close second is DVDs. DVDs are what we call a declining format. That means that they are less popular than they used to be. We're still buying them, but they don't circ as well as they used to. But at Northgate, they're our second most popular item. And we recently refreshed the collection there with the help of the Friends of the Library. And bought several hundred new DVDs for Northgate because we realized that's what the community there is asking for. And then the third most popular at Northgate is adult fiction in English. No surprise there, but interesting to see nonetheless. So that's what's hot in our collection. What's new in our collection? Can I move that around?
Oh, I can.
I didn't anticipate gender being up in there. So we love trying new things. And it's great within the library to feature new collections or have new things for people to try. Last year, our great librarian Bonnie developed a classics and local authors collection in response to community request. And she did that by pulling out items that we already had in our interfiled within our current fiction and nonfiction. So she pulled them out and then bought some nice new ones to refresh it. And that's been great. There's a great author community in Marin. We have a lot of authors and they do often ask if we can feature their book in the library. And so now we have a section for that. The manga collection, this one's wonderful. We already had graphic novels at the library. We hadn't started collecting manga yet. When Basha Jendrushak started at the library, they're a supervising librarian now, but when they started as a librarian, Basha has a deep knowledge of manga and incredible knowledge of the Japanese publishing industry and how to acquire those materials. So we piloted a manga collection at Northgate first and have since extended it to downtown and Pickleweed. And that's been a hit. Basha's collecting manga for adults, teens, and kids, and they're all very hot items. And then lastly, video games. That's another one where one of our new librarians, Matthew Hurley, was like, why don't we have video games? You know, and it was like, good question. And thanks to the generosity of the Friends of the Library, we often rely on the Friends when we're piloting a collection that we haven't budgeted for. So with the Friends' help, we created a small collection at Northgate, and then we were able to extend that to downtown and Pickleweed too. So we have games for all different kinds of consoles. We have Xbox, we have PlayStation, we have Switch, and we've learned that the Switch games are by far the most popular, but they're all moving, and it's really great. Even now, patrons walk in and just go, "Oh, I didn't know you had video games," and that's a great thing to be able to offer the community. So that's what's new. How do we buy things? People ask this a lot. The number one answer is we use specialized library vendors to acquire most of our materials. These are companies that help us know what's new, but they also supply some of the processing and cataloging. So stickers that go on the books, they help supply cataloging records that help us get them into the library catalog right away so that we can let people take them home. So we use mostly specialized library vendors. Occasionally we'll buy locally from a bookstore like Copperfield's. Occasionally we'll buy from Amazon if something is not available in any other way. And we do very occasionally accept donated items to the collection. This is mostly like if a local author says, hey, you know, I've written a book, could it be in the library? Here's 2 copies. We say great, and then we're able to process those and put them in the collection. So those are very occasional ways that we acquire items. We have a team of selectors. Right now it's 6 people, and they each have a broad selection area. One person does all children's fiction. One person does all materials in Spanish. One person does all the nonfiction for the library. So that helps those folks take a broad view. And as I say, discover which formats are declining and which are ascending, and how to allocate our limited budget to meet all of those needs and wants. Here's what our selectors do. They review lists of new materials, obviously, keep up with publishing trends and what's new. They also keep up with media coverage. Anything that's featured in the Independent Journal, people are going to want. Anyone who's on Good Morning America, anyone that Terry Gross is interviewing on Fresh Air. We want to already have those books. And I know I often, see who's on Fresh Air and then I'm like, oh, good, I already bought that book. But every once in a while, there is a sleeper or something you didn't expect. So we do keep up with that kind of thing. And yeah, award winners, we're looking to see, who wins the Man Booker Prize. Everybody's going to want that book right away. And a couple of years ago, it was someone really out of the blue and you couldn't get the book in the US. So there are some challenges there. So we do keep on top of that. We do consider patron suggestions for purchase. Patrons are able to suggest purchases using the BiblioCommons catalog that we all use, the green and white page. There's a link there to suggest a purchase. The selectors review those every month or two, and we do scoop up some gems there, sometimes stuff that we had missed. Often people are suggesting things that we've already bought or we already have, but that's a great way to communicate directly and understand what people are asking for. I should also mention, if people request something that seems very niche or like it might not have broad community appeal, then our Zip Books program is a great vector for those requests. Zip Books is a state library funded program that allows us to order something directly for the patron that we don't have, ship it to their house, and then they can return it to the library when they're done with it. So, and finally, we all use, we have specialized software to create reports against our materials to identify trends. We have a couple of web-based products that we use that show us a lot of dashboards. That's how we create these reports about what's hot and what's declining and what is really moving. We recently learned that down in the downtown library specifically, adult mystery is our very top moving type of thing. And that's a little unusual. So the people of San Rafael who are reading adult fiction really love mystery as opposed to sci-fi or thrillers or any other type of thing. This is an example of a trend that you can identify using these types of reports. That's a wonder book. A wonder book is a type of book. We have them mostly for children that you open it up and in the cover, there's a little player, an audio player, and you can press the play button and it will read the book along with you. And our great librarian, Margaret, discovered this format a few years ago and we thought, let's try it. They're expensive. So we bought a few and they went like hotcakes. They're more popular. We have the book on audio separately. We have the book in print. We certainly own this book just as regular print, but the combination of the two has been really appealing. It's great if you happen to have a kid who just wants the same book over and over and over. The Wonder Book will help you with it.
Familiar.
Yeah. And also it prompts the reader to turn the pages. And so it helps develop their skills with what's on the page. And we've heard feedback from parents who don't speak English as a first language that they feel concerned that their pronunciation is not correct and that they feel like the Wonder Book helps their kid hear the word the correct way, or what they feel is the correct way. So those have been a big hit, and the dashboards that we use and the data that we have help us understand. Of course, anecdotally, we see what's coming in and out of the library, but it really helps us understand, hey, we bought 50 of these, they've gone out 700 times, we should buy more, that kind of thing. Okay, very last thing is what have we added lately? This is just a snapshot of new items we added between April of last year and April of this year. As you can see, about 5,000 print books, about 600 audiovisual items, and then 700 digital items that we at San Rafael specifically selected for Overdrive. And that included a lot of materials in Spanish that we're trying out to see if there's an appetite for digital ebooks in Spanish. Yeah, and I didn't actually do the math. So how many items? That's about 5,300, is that right?
6,200, 6,300.
6,300, okay. So that's the pace at which we're adding things. And as you recall from the first slide, we have about 100,000, 90 to 100,000 physical items. And last year we added about 6,300. So that's just an understanding of what's in our library and what's coming in all the time. So that was a very brief run through. This is a topic I have a lot of passion for, and I love this part of my job. And so I welcome any comments or questions about that. And if you have any questions that you think of later, you're welcome to contact me anytime. Yeah. Oh. Thanks.
We'll segue over to questions from trustees.
It's about this leasing 5,000 new books and finding shelf space and storage, or do you rotate books through? Or?
Yeah, well, you know, the nice thing about physical items is some of them do wear out. You know, people don't think about it, but every year, a certain number of our items just fall apart. They're well loved, especially in the children's collection. So we have things coming, we also have things going. But it is a challenge in our library. As you know, our container is only so big, and every library has this challenge, but our container is quite full. Yeah. It's wonderful though.
So when you count the fictions and DVDs in different libraries, is Petrol's checking out, it's including ones that transfer from other library because Santa Fe doesn't have it. So it doesn't matter where the original source of that.
Yeah, that's a really astute question. The statistics I was looking at were for our items, the items that we own that belong to San Rafael circulating, but in a consortium like ours, that can include items that go out on holds to other locations. I was not including items from other libraries that circulate through our building. I was just looking at items that say San Rafael Library up in front, yeah. And I know that gets really tricky in a consortium and we kind of pull our hair out too. It can be a lot clearer in a system where it's just you and your stuff, but it's also such a great benefit to our patrons to be able to borrow from all over. We're fine with the addition complexity. Good question.
Excuse me, on the new additions, there were about, I can't remember the number, like 500 digital items. Does that include each individual license you might buy for an ebook, or is that like, you know, you bought 10 licenses of the newest bestseller and that counts as one? Okay.
And that goes for physical items as well. So we bought 5,000 books. Some of those were surely duplicates, but that's also a great question. As you probably know, our ebooks are digitally licensed. So when we buy an ebook, we're buying it for 1 year or 24 checkouts, whichever comes sooner usually, and then it expires and you have to buy it again.
And then to that number two, we talked about this a few meetings ago, but we have the Overdrive collection that is just shared, you know, throughout MarinNet. So part of our MarinNet budget goes to supplementing that collection. 700 was, I think Katie just personally selected those and supplemented what we already had.
Oh,
So
okay.
the amount that was purchased that's available to everyone in Marin is much, much higher than that. But 700 was in addition to the money that we already devote through the money that we give to MarinNet, it was extra supplementary.
Yes, thanks, Jill. That's a complex picture.
It's
for sure.
confusing, yeah.
But you know, often at the end of the year, especially with the supply chain being as it's been, many of the books that we order haven't come by fiscal close, and then that money hasn't been encumbered on the budget. The books never arrive, and so I sometimes have extra money at the end of the year, and we can use that to buy ebooks or something that can be delivered right away. So there's a lot of complexity.
Okay, so the additions to the digital items can come both from us directly as well as the consortium.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
That's
Great.
funny. Jill and I talked about that slide. I acknowledged that it was confusing. I just, I was anticipating someone asking, don't you buy any ebooks? And the answer is yes, we do. But again, as part of a consortium, like we have a shared collection and a lot of that is bought centrally.
And then another funny thing with the ebooks is those are just Overdrive materials that we're purchasing licenses for, but then we have like Hoopla, which is like, you know, 1 million items that we're just purchasing. It's more like Netflix. So people are getting more than just those, you know, whatever we're purchasing in Overdrive.
Yeah. And the way Hoopla works, it's, you know, there's this vast catalog of items. If you've never checked that one, that's
It's
one.
great.
It's amazing. And it often has that thing that you can't get elsewhere.
Demon Copperhead.
Demon Copperhead, the new Barbara King solver. It has whatever, probably 200 holds, but you can get it right now on Hoopla. But the library is charged every time a patron presses the button to say check out, then we get charged a couple of bucks. And that's why that is gated to only a certain number of checkouts.
Oh, that's
People don't just hit that. So that's how that works. Yeah.
When you check out Overdrive books and it's in our Libby, you check out as a Adobe.
Yeah.
Or reading it through the Libby or
Kindle, yeah.
Is it like priced differently or is the same thing? Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter for the library point of view, you're paying is the exchange.
Short answer, the Kindle ones are usually more expensive. But that is a format that people really, really want, and we try to supply that. But due to the nature of the proprietary file type provided by Amazon, that is a Kindle book.
Yeah.
And EPUB is really just, it's just like a big PDF, exactly, yeah. But a Kindle file, you know.
But it doesn't matter if it's, because some books are not available as Kindle items. So if you're, we purchased the book and it might be more expensive, if it can be sent to Kindle, but if you're choosing to read it in Libby or send it to Kindle, that doesn't cost us anything extra.
That's a yeah, and people do often request either like, can you please get this on Kindle? And the answer is like, I can't, it doesn't exist. I can't, particularly old, they'll want a book that's 10 or 15 years old. Can you get this as Kindle? And it's like, that doesn't exist. I can't get that. So.
Yeah, there's a one DVD documentary about and it was kids all over the world, how they get to school in different world. It was someone told me it was so good and I couldn't find anywhere and then Hoopla had. Oh, so I requested this library,
yeah, Hoopla is a treasure trove. So happy to answer questions anytime. Hope that was a good.
That's great.
Thank you.
Library had those spot like you get the internet connection.
I don't think we ever had that.
Pandemic, maybe? No, that might be county library.
Yeah, I think county might have done that.
Yeah, that's something some libraries have and we don't know right now, but.
I'll open up to public comment if anyone online.
Gender, stop sharing.
No attendees online.
Okay, I'll close public comment and then we've already given our comments and questions. I'll close item 2 and move on. Oh,
Public comment.
yeah.
Public.
Right.
I'm sorry.
Sorry,
I was paying.
I'm showing us off because we both have in-person attendees, so everyone's like, what do we do here? But okay, so I think we're okay. We'll close item 2 and move on to item 3, which is an overview of state report statistics for fiscal year 2018 through fiscal year 2023.
Okay, so I have already prepared it on the screen. So I'll take it from here. So I have. Great job. Yeah.
I meet you.
You're always welcome to stay.
No,
I'm gonna go
go
close the library.
So we're gonna look at some library statistics over the past 6 years. A little bit of background just about the California State Library and this endeavor of collecting statistics. So California State Library is huge. It's a research, government and public library located in Sacramento, run by the state of California. And it's also a centralized agency that supports public libraries throughout California through funding opportunities, shared resources. A big thing it does is you can apply for those state library grants. And one of its major functions is that it collects annual statistics and then it publishes them and makes them available publicly. And that's for all public libraries throughout California. So if you go to the state library website, you'll be able to find some really in-depth data going back to fiscal year 16-17. And then that can be used, anybody can look at it, but it's generally a tool for library management to make decisions for our own institutions, both looking at our own statistics and also comparing them to what other libraries are doing and what resources they have. So we are currently gathering our fiscal year 22-23 statistics. They're due in November. It's a pretty arduous process, but it is worth it. And we haven't submitted those yet, but I'm just starting to look at them with the help of some other staff. So we're reviewing all of it, but tonight I'm going to talk about a few key metrics, which are San Rafael residents and library card holders, our open hours, library visits, so people that come through our doors, our physical collection and circulation, so touching on what Katie talked about tonight, and our library programs. And we are going to look at these not only in the scope of 22-23, but also compared to our data from the past 6 years. This is a really interesting, period of time because it encompasses global changes and also big changes within our own organization. So those are, of course, COVID-19. You'll see huge fluctuations in data related to the pandemic. Also, we opened a 3rd branch in December 2018. And we integrated, so we used to be a separate library and community services department. And then in 2019, we integrated 2018, 2019.
It depends on what the date you count it as, but
Before the pandemic, we integrated into a combined library and rec department. So that's a cute photo of 2 library staff members and 2 of our program coordinators doing outreach together as one department. All right, so let's get into the data. So first graph to look at, I'll just give you some, we can look at the graph and then go to some key takeaways, but this is our San Rafael residents. Orange is our population, and then blue is our number of card holders. So see some pretty clear trends happening here. And key takeaways here are that the population has remained relatively static, and at times it's gone down, at times it's gone up a little bit, and it was lowest here in fiscal year 2021, and then it's highest now in fiscal year 22-23. And then, of course, in contrast to that, you can see our number of registered library card holders has been steadily increasing, which is great. Right now, we're at about 67% of San Rafael residents are, or sorry, 63% have library cards, which is fantastic. One key reason for this is that we do a lot of outreach, and also we have a school library card drive that we started in 2019, and that's working with the schools to ensure that every student at a San Rafael public school also has a library card. So it's an opt-out, not opt-in thing. All right, now we move to open hours, which is quite interesting. You can see where the pandemic comes into play, but there's other stuff going on too. So we start here. This is fiscal year 17-18. This is before Northgate. This is when we opened Northgate, just at the end of the year. So it increased a bit. And these are annual hours that we are open throughout the year. And then, of course, the pandemic happened midway through fiscal year 19-20 pandemic, and this is where we're at now.
You can't quite see, I'm sorry, you can't quite see the total on the left, but it is.
On this one,
It's in the thousands.
blurry, yeah, 4,538, and then
Yeah, sorry, I meant on the scale.
Like the axis.
Oh, yeah, that's true. On the left. It's
oh, I see. Yeah, it's in the
Yeah, it's
thousands.
in the thousands.
And then this number is 6,150.
Is the fiscal year start from
July 1.
July to June 30th. So our takeaways are pretty obvious. So
Stuff on.
oh, it's also in the packet, Larry.
No, I've got, that's why I noticed it, is because I could see it.
It's so you can see it's fluctuated drastically over the past 6 years, and this is other than the pandemic years, this is not necessarily standard for other public libraries. So like we talked about, this is when we opened up the pop-up library at Northgate. That was in collaboration with Marin County Free Library at the end of 2018. And then these 2 years, so the kind of the timeline for this was, for the pandemic, was that we shut down our in-person services entirely from March 2020 to June. We were all working from home as best we could. We offered curbside service from June 2020 to June 2021. And then in June 2021, we resumed in-person service at our 3 locations, and we also expanded our hours at that time too. So we were open more hours than we ever have been before. We started operating Northgate as a permanent San Rafael location, and we no longer are in collaboration with the county. it's pretty cumbersome once you start running it as a permanent location in terms of funding and management and various things. So it was working well for us to do it independently, but then we're not getting support from another agency. So, so yeah, this is our current open hours, 6,150. And now we're looking at library visits. So these are the number of people that walk through our doors. You can see also the way in which the pandemic has impacted that and probably still continues to impact it now. Highest here in fiscal year 18-19. So we were starting to see modest growth from fiscal year 17-18 to fiscal year 18-19. Likely related, or not necessarily, but we could guess that maybe it's related to the opening of Northgate in December 2018. That's more people coming through our doors. And the way this works is we have sensors at every one of our locations that captures ins and outs, and then we just look at one of those. Of course, you don't want to double count people. Then at the end, partway through fiscal year 19-20, of course, it dropped and then plummeted because we were closed to in-person service basically this whole fiscal year, except for, you know, June 1st through June 30th. Related to pandemic shutdowns. And so we are starting to see growth. You know, we have more visitors than we did in the last fiscal year, but we're still at about 61% of where we were at our highest in fiscal year 18-19. So we're not seeing as many visitors coming through our doors. And this is interesting because in fiscal year 18-19, we had 2 branches. In this year, we had 3 open branches and we saw only 61% of the visitors that we saw then. So Katie already touched on this quite a bit, but this is, so we're looking here at our collection size in blue. And then orange is the number of items circulated. One thing to note here is these are items that we own that were circulated. So that could be an item that was paged and sent to another library and circulated there. But if it belongs to us, that's what this number is. And that doesn't count people coming in and picking up their holds from other libraries. Let's move on to takeaways. So one thing that you'll notice is that we have reduced the size of our physical collection. I keyed into Mary's question about where do those things go? And we do have such a finite amount of space. We have not enough square footage for our population size, and we do have to be thoughtful about what we purchase, how much we purchase, and when we bring things in, we have to also be deselecting items, and that's a normal, people feel often sensitive about that, but it is a very normal part of our jobs to use data to and condition to determine what we are no longer going to keep on our shelves. And something that you tend to see is that when you are removing items that are in poor condition or that aren't circulating, that allows our really good stuff to shine more, and you do see circulation start to increase. So it's not a bad thing that it's reducing. It's a good thing. We've definitely become a lot more data driven and a lot more proactive about weeding in those past number of years. Deselecting, sorry. So even though our numbers are going down for items in our collection, we were seeing, I guess it was highest here. We did see this huge jump in circulation in fiscal year 21-22, and I couldn't really think exactly what to attribute that to, except perhaps either people checked out a ton of our books or maybe data was entered incorrectly. I like to think not, but I like to think we just had a huge spike in circulation. Yeah, in fiscal year 21-22. It went down.
This pandemic, like,
yeah, people coming back.
people getting excited.
These were the kind of pandemic years. We were still doing curbside, so our stuff was still moving, but people couldn't come in and browse as much. So it was sort of like that does drive circulation as well. So in this last year, we decreased from this number from fiscal year 21-22, but we are starting to approach pre-pandemic numbers, which is wonderful. So another thing just to think about as we're looking at these circulation numbers is just it's in the context of the increased demand for ebooks and e-audiobooks. So like we said a few meetings back, that demand has increased 313% since fiscal year 17-18. And the highest circulation was in fiscal year 21-22, likely because people were not leaving the house as much. It's decreased a little since then. This is some really interesting data here. This is our library programs. So you're seeing some clear trends here. Blue is children's, orange is our teen programs, and gray is adult. So building, pandemic, and we're still quite low. So one just note before we talk about programs is, we always think about the collection when we think about our public libraries, but enrichment programs are a core service that the library offers. So those are things like story times, art talks, like Bonnie puts on these wonderful art talks. We bring in authors, we do art classes, we bring in magicians and other performers, and that is a core service of public libraries, even though it's not the first thing people necessarily think about when they think about libraries. So that's something that we certainly want to be providing to the community. We were steadily increasing our programs. I'm really proud because this is when I was in charge of teen. So we're thriving. And it's funny because this was our highest year for programs, even though we shut down partway towards the end of the fiscal year. So we were on track to have even more than this. We did continue programs during our kind of pandemic years. We did for fiscal year 2021, we did pretty much all virtual. So we were doing YouTube story times, we were doing Zoom programs, Zoom book clubs, Zoom author talks. In this year, even though it was a bit lower, we were doing a mix of virtual and also some outdoor programming. That's what felt safe for staff and a lot of community members. We did at the very end of fiscal year 21-22, we went back to in-person story times that spring. And okay, so this is at this point in time, we've returned to most of the in-person programs that we did before. We do in person again. Some we did find lend themselves well to being virtual. Like we have an ESL club, conversation club. We have people that are actually not necessarily local to San Rafael, and that worked better for them to remain virtual, even though we're not as concerned about meeting in person at this point in time. But let's just compare. Right now we're at 29% of the programs that we hosted in this year, which also was impacted by the pandemic. So our programming is quite low at this point in time. And this graph here, this is just one thing to draw our attention to. So these are the number of programs offered. These are the annual number of open hours. And you can see, despite other than kind of these pandemic, this year in particular, this pandemic year, as our hours have increased, our programming has decreased. And it's just staffing capacity. So, and also pandemic recovery. But when we added a third branch and we expanded our hours, staff just have less time to plan and facilitate these enrichment programs. So we are still prioritizing things like weekly story times, and reading buddies is huge, where adults read with children, or kids read to adults, volunteers, and math club, where kids can get support in math. We don't want to lose those programs. Some of our first Wednesday art talks are very popular. So those are the things we're focusing on, but we aren't able to do, 1,000 programs anymore with our current capacities.
I think also just one other thing to add there is the space capacity, right?
True.
We don't really have a lot of space to do programming, which I think in some of these prior years, we had that community room that had to be converted for like technical services, and we're outgrowing the space.
And that's another thing is we have to be very creative. So our story times are held in the City Hall Council chambers. Zentangle, one of our art programs, is held right here. We don't have really anywhere other than the Carnegie Wing, which we're booting people out of the reading room to host programs. That's kind of where we can do that sort of thing, or outdoors.
So I think that there is with the work that we presented in June, July. Part of that is to get a little community space back, definitely not as big as we would like, but some dedicated space
For the
is part of
renovation.
that, as part of that renovation, and then obviously. There's a bigger.
I'm almost done. So just a conclusion, so you can see there's been a significant change to our services over the past 6 years. Departmental changes, obviously the pandemic, it's impacted all libraries. And this is just a presentation of the data. Catherine and I are really interested in what we're seeing, and we're continuing to evaluate this alongside comparable agencies. We're just starting to do that work to make sure that we're strategically utilizing our resources and figuring out what our priorities are as we're serving the community. And with that, I will open it up for comments and questions from the board.
Thanks, Jill.
Sure. Or I guess,
You mentioned about volunteers, so you use volunteers a lot instead of staff, is that something that can complement or you?
not instead of staff. So we have a teen volunteer program, which is currently paused because we have a staff on leave who runs that program. We have our reading buddies it's an adult volunteer who reads with a child who's in like a beginning reader. And we have to background check them and vet them. I think we have about 30 of those folks. The teen volunteers were doing things like kind of like Sunny's boys, Trevor used to volunteer, but I never run. They're doing things like, cleaning our baby toys, helping set up for programs, but we don't really want to get into that place where we're having volunteers do work of paid staff. So they're not shelving books.
Typically managing volunteers takes more staff effort than like it.
Yeah, particularly the teens.
I just know, even when I volunteered at the school being a nurse, then unions and other people came in and said, no, you can't do something that is a
Because
staff
it's tricky.
position. Right.
It's probably something I've always thought about. Is it possibility of reducing the hour for Santa Fe? Because the Santa Fe is the only library actually open 7 days a week.
We're not the only library. MCFL has there's a number of libraries. I've been looking at this in detail. There's a number of libraries. I think a lot of libraries did, coming out of the pandemic, go hard on the open hours, and that's a conversation we want to have is, with limited staff capacity, are we investing that capacity in the right thing? Is, and what's that balance? So it's a conversation. Yeah.
And I thought I guess it's like a Kutamara open, close like on Sunday, but at least Fairfax opens on Sunday, but they go on Saturday or something like that. They are like, because they're one group, because there's like 8 libraries.
So the Civic Center Library is in, Terra Linda community, and they are closed on Saturdays, and the Northgate Library is slammed on Saturdays. So we're serving a similar community. And so it does kind of work like that, but it does put a little burden on. We have to put more staff in on.
Yeah, it's also, we want to make sure when we're thinking about this, we're like, the solutions we're considering actually do increase capacity. So like Sundays, we typically staff that almost all with temp staff that wouldn't be doing programs anyways. So, closing Sunday wouldn't necessarily free up a lot of
1, 2, 3.
So it's very complicated, and we're just starting to, look at it and think, are our service levels where we want them to be? Yeah.
It was a huge conversation when I first got on the board, was coming back from the pandemic, and I remember all the trustees were just peppering staff with questions like, is this the right hours, or this the right, like, are you sure you're calibrating it right? And I think y'all were annoyed with us at that point. But so I think first and foremost, I think it's really on the library staff that you guys increased library card holders by 33% since the pandemic, and made that decision to open up. And I think that's great context actually that we didn't have back then, but that you've opened up more hours post-pandemic than you did pre-pandemic. So I think first of all, that's super commendable, and you guys should really be proud of the effort and work you guys have done opening up post-pandemic. One question I had though, has there been any drilling down into the data on the events to see like what the per event attendance is, to see like are we,
I don't
are
have
people
the
coming back and
attendance.
eating more?
Well, so that one is just like the number of attendance. There's a couple things that inflate that, but when we look at individual programs, we're always looking at like, well, if no one's coming, or we're evaluating like maybe this one has low attendance, but it serves this population that we're trying to target because for equity reasons, but we're always looking at that data when we're deciding which programs to add and keep.
But I think as we continue to do this, like evaluation of our service levels, part of the conversation has to be like, how do we make sure we're serving kind of a diverse audience? What is actually bringing people in? Because, one of the things I see on this is we've increased our hours substantially, but our visitation is down.
Right.
So are we actually reaching more people by being open more, or would we reach more people if we, had more programming? So that's something we're definitely want to look further at is what serves more people.
Yeah, I love that you're giving the cards to the kids. I love it. I'm just thinking about all the seniors in facilities, and you have the traveling book. Maybe that's the civic centers, the bookmobile.
That's the
But
county.
wondering, here's a population with all the people in the nursing home that don't have access to books.
Well, and that's another
That's
core
something-
service that the county offers, and we had offered in the past, which books for homebound residents, and we haven't brought that back yet.
We do have a partnership with Vidmalon.
Yeah.
We've got a librarian who goes there once a month.
And we do see also some of the facilities, we have like one person will come and pick up all the books for the residents that live there. But there's a number of kind of like representatives who come and collect those books. So
Really?
yeah, we can get them kind of like special permissions noted on their account that they are able to check out books for residents that they're not holding the card. So, but that's not like a formal program. It's just something we work out with individuals.
I do that, my neighbor.
Yeah,
My
that's
neighbor,
great.
I have 3 questions. First, I like the presentation. This really gives us a lot of really good information, not only about the library, but about how it's the programs and the attendance. The first one is just a comment. I don't know if you showed the program attendance slide, but clearly the 2021 number would give some pause because
Are you
showing
so
that the result,
explanation.
Is that page 5?
Yes.
The adult number.
Talking about, I believe, is this huge number of
Adults.
2,200. So we had in fiscal year 2021, we had, about 260 or so programs. And we had our attendance, this gray line here, which I didn't include in the slides.
I think that's really why Jill did.
Yeah, it's hugely inflated, and that's because I don't know if you guys are familiar with our All Things Apple program. It's not actually even done by library staff. It's this wonderful woman named Baron who teaches largely older adults how to use Apple products specifically, because that's what she knows. And she draws about 150 people. So we just kind of promote it and put her Zoom link there, and she facilitates it. And she gets about 150 people per program. And during this time period, she was offering 4 per week.
Oh.
So we were getting huge attendance, but it was all
Then it's,
proprietary to Apple.
so library programs, that's my second question is, the number of programs. Should we expect the 22-23 number, and that's what, the 250, 275, 280 to continue? Is that the kind of target? Like, do we?
What we're thinking about right now, and I think just taking it was helpful for me to put this together because I'm just starting to pull that state data, and I'm just starting to, I'm new to my role, Catherine's relatively new too, and we're just starting to kind of do this work of comparing it to previous years and comparing it to other comp agencies. And that's a question is this our target number or do we want it to be higher? And if it's higher, if we want to have more programs, what do we need to change?
I would expect that there's still like a little bit of pandemic recovery in there, because that's what July 2020. What, no, 2022 was that, and when did we open? June 2022?
No,
No, June
2021. No, June 2022 was when we reopened our doors completely.
June 2022.
Yeah, and
so July 2022, we were still ramping up.
And it was a lot of like outdoor programs. And those
Yeah.
were challenging in various ways.
So, yeah, I would expect, even if we decide to, this is the right mix, open hours all the way, that's what's the most important, and I would expect a little bit higher this coming year, but you know, not up to the levels that we were once were.
Everybody go out now, go to different places. Like,
My third question was, and I was, well, surprised that we have such a, high percentage of library card holders relative to the total population. Is that, or do you look at other jurisdictions
I
from
did.
California data? Is
I
that
did look at that.
typical?
I was thinking, oh man, we're probably in first place with this, and we're not. I think we were on the higher end, but I would say we're on the higher end of middle, so that's great.
It was good
for all of
news.
us,
Yeah.
yeah. All of California.
All right, thanks.
Good, it's notice that they changed you could get the library card number online now. Right? You could
Yes,
just without need to be being in physically with a
you
drive license or.
you
PCA.
can, trying to think if there's another
The
step.
pandemic, they're allowed to apply for the library card if you didn't have any.
Yes, you can, you're correct, Sunny.
Yeah.
So you can get your library card online and use our digital services. And then when you go in person, we'll ask to see a photo ID to actually give you the card.
Yeah.
I'm so like.
I think that's what I remind people who never have.
Yeah,
They never. So that way he can read the New York Times for free. So he did it right away and he was like so happy.
that's great. Good to see you.
And good to meet you. Take care. Yeah. See you next time. Okay, well, thank you, everyone. And Jill, again, thank you. That was a really comprehensive presentation. Appreciate it. We'll open up public comment first to in-person attendees.
Yes, thank you. I was interested in the card holder key metric plus 33%. The gentleman had mentioned that was. I have a San Rafael library card from 1979. Am I still one of those numbers?
Yes.
Okay, so the ones that you gave to kids and people who have died that you don't know about?
They do expire after 2 years, so you'll get a notification that your library card has expired, and then you have to confirm that you want to keep it. So maybe for 2 years, someone might have a library card after they've died, but then it does get deleted.
Oh, okay, all right, because
So those are active
I
card
have one
holders.
rattling around. So,
Yeah, you have to see if it's expired or not.
okay, I was just kind of wondering
No, that's a good question.
how those things come about. Thank you.
Okay, I would move on
It's
to.
Richard, right?
Yeah.
Richard Sears for purposes of the
Just taking
the minute.
I think you can just say member of the public.
If you would prefer not to be recognized by your name, it's an honor to.
Thank you. Jinder, anyone online for online or public comment?
No online attendees.
Okay, great. We'll close public comment and move on to item number 4. Other brief program updates or reports on any meetings, conferences, and or seminars attended by staff.
First up.
Focused on this
Yeah.
before.
Yes, it was a great one. I have one last question from those cards about the 313% increase in e-books. and that's obviously a trend. I'm kind of wondering if and when artificial intelligence is going to be one of these key metrics in library business.
What do you mean by that?
Well, the availability of information and librarians being fluent and being able to access information.
That's something that our digital service and open government department in the city is tracking quite closely. For, you know, how is it safe for staff to use? What are the benefits? What are the challenges? We, at this point, I think it's a little bit new for us to really predict how it could integrate into library services, but I mean, we do like to be on the cutting edge of technology.
And I know some of our vendors, like our library catalog, Bibliocommons is starting to look at AI features like book recommendations and things, but we're not really using it in our daily work at this point.
Not using it yet?
No, just as competition. Disseminating knowledge.
I mean, I think that from like libraries have been around since ancient Greece, right? And like we've seen so many technological advancements, and I think you could say the same thing about Google and everything. And we change our relevance as time goes on. And like Catherine said, it's so new that we don't know how that might change our jobs. So it's kind of too early to tell. And what a threat could be. Like a library is so much more than someone coming up to the desk and saying, can you give me a book recommendation? Like we're a building, we have we bring in community, we have physical books. So I guess time will tell.
Yeah.
Okay, so well, yeah, but I know you've had a few more in-net meetings.
Yeah, we had a consultant come in somewhere in our big consortium to look at coming up with changing the staffing for MarinNet, the actual people that work to maintain our catalog and all of that. So we had a directors meeting about that. We were looking at putting together a vision statement. Take care.
Thank you.
Nothing super of note. Did you want to talk about the
what's
the like AMH stuff?
Oh,
and also city council.
So we did get our kind of phase 2 contract with Nolan Tam approved for getting to the construction document phase for the renovation of the downtown library. So that's exciting. We're gonna kick off those meetings again. We're hoping to get a kind of clearer timeline so we can start planning, because there will likely be a pretty significant closure required. So we want to start planning for what that's going to look like. And we're just excited for the project to happen. And then additionally, we are also moving forward. We had the AMH, the automated materials handling RFP. We are working through kind of the final agreement with the vendor. So right now we're just waiting for the city attorney to review the agreement. Then they'll review, and then it is of a size that city council will have to approve it.
Covers it.
Well, we'll open up to trustees for questions, comments.
All your questions that I was just talking, just coming back, I didn't make a note. You said the visitors to the library, patrons coming in, there are the sensors to know how many actually come in, they necessarily not check out the books.
Just who comes through the door.
Come in the door and leave. Is it like done by some sort of a laser beam or?
It's a sensor. I don't really know what it's in the ceiling, and it counts the ins and outs. And then there's a like a software associated with that, so we can break it down by location, by hour, by day of the week. There's all sorts of ways to look at the data, and so we use that information, that data, when we're making like decisions about changing our hours or staffing levels. It's a really good metric for us. Yeah.
Also wondering, last, I don't know if it's related to all this or not. Last Sunday or Saturday, I was at the library upstairs. Because someone was screaming in the desk. So there's two young, maybe college students, high students that got disturbed while they're working on something. So they end up kind of getting up and leaving the library. So I felt kind of bad, like if they could go somewhere else, and the other patrons like making very disturbing sound or something. So it wasn't that busy time, but I just want to promote the younger generation. I mean, so rarely sees them. These young people, two people coming there and studying or doing some project together.
Yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of behaviors at the library that are inappropriate, and I trust that staff redirect those behaviors. If someone's screaming, that's obviously not allowed. So we would ask them to stop. If they don't stop, we would ask them to leave. We have like everyone's trained in a way to kind of address those behaviors, but I would just say it's a public building and you can't go there and expect that you're not going to see someone scream. Like, unfortunately, it's just part of it.
Especially given what a lot of California cities are dealing with as well, so.
Yeah.
Larry, anything on item number 4?
No, actually, I do have one question. I know that there is a plan afoot for the North Gate area, and particularly for the mall. My question was, are we kind of keeping our eye on what's being proposed in terms of being able to have some input into what that space that we currently have might end up as part of the larger plan, and particularly since the Knoll report from 2019 recommended that we expand from 3,000, I believe, to 11,000. They had a particular part of the mall, one of the mall spaces identified. Not that we'll get that, but at least keep tabs of what's going on so that, and we could do that as commissioners, help, be part of that input to that project. But I don't live up there, so I don't follow it.
It's kind of like, we don't want to talk too much because since it wasn't agendized, but we can say that, that project is going through the public review process right now. It's, I believe, going to planning commission soon. So I would highly encourage anyone to attend and just kind of share your thoughts on the library needs there. It is currently still included as part of the plan. There's a slightly larger kind of a space on what they're terming like the town center.
I've looked at the plan and there is that spot in the library, so for the library. Yeah, so and I know it also came up at a prior meeting, I think before you were on the board, but I think it is something that the property owner and the city staff work on to make sure that it's.
Yeah, I can see it's probably not the right time to bring it to this board still so early.
If somebody was.
Yeah, but I wouldn't, I mean, just saying it's
My building, so if you have any questions.
I recommend.
Mayon, I can't, yeah, there you go. I was gonna talk about that.
So I did construction financing. It's my career.
Well, we lost our in-person attendee. So Jinder, anyone online?
No.
Okay, close item 4, move on to item 5, brief reports on any meetings, conferences, and or seminars attended by the board members. Anything from anybody?
Naked too, it's the storytelling live show at the library and serving wine. I was just wondering, I saw another library having, it was a really that children's sing and dance or stomp, and it was sing and stomp event at the Stillwater, because nobody uses the Stillwater during the daytime. So I thought, it's not if I could talk to somebody like Terra Linda, it's a community center during the daytime. It might be empty.
It's not.
Oh, it's not.
Our community centers are pretty actively
Active
used during the day. Yeah, I mean, there's like, especially at Borough, there's opportunities where, you know, we'll be looking into that at San Rafael Community Center a little bit when. With the
Korean dance or something.
There's a lot of programming. But yeah, I mean, I think we are creative about where we do programs. Yeah.
Right, close item 5 and adjourn the meeting, I think. Thank you, everyone, appreciate it. Yeah,